Hey, BC here for BC Nephro. Thanks for watching. I'm Dr. Brian Cronin, board certified nephrologist and clinical specialist in hypertension. Today's topic, intravenous fluids. But before we get into that, make sure you check out bcnephro.com, where you will find articles not only on this topic, but on a wide range of nephrology subjects. Also check out the other videos at this channel and check out me on Instagram at bcnephro. Links to all will be in the description below. Now, let's get into it. IV fluids can be divided into three categories: isotonic, the same tonicity as plasma; hypotonic, a lower tonicity than plasma; and hypertonic, a higher tonicity than plasma. In order to understand when each type of fluid should be given and the clinical effects, one should have an understanding of the physiology of fluid water distribution throughout the body. A significant portion of the body is composed of water. In adult females, it is about 50% of the total body weight, and in adult males, 60%. The percentage is higher in younger people, infants and children, and decreases in the elderly. This is because muscle has a higher water content than fat. Of the total body water, the majority is inside cells, intracellular, 2/3, and 1/3 is extracellular. Of the extracellular fluid, 1/4 of that, so 1/12 total, is in the intravascular space, and 3/4 is in the interstitial space in between cells. Now, water can freely pass cell membranes, so water distributes through all these compartments, both the intracellular and extracellular, intravascular and interstitial compartments, whereas ions, typically electrolytes, sodium, do not freely pass cell membranes. They require ion channels, so these are restricted to the extracellular space. They can pass through vascular endothelium, so they're not restricted to the intravascular space, but also distribute to the interstitial space throughout the whole extracellular space. The movement of fluid is guided by several principles. The movement between the intracellular and the extracellular space is based on the osmolarity. Fluid will move to an area of lower osmolarity, lower solute, to higher osmolarity. So for example, if water is administered, it will initially dilute down the plasma osmolarity. The fluid will then move from the extracellular to the intracellular space until this osmolar gradient dissipates. Now, extracellular fluid movement between the intravascular and the interstitial space is guided by two factors. One is hydrostatic pressure. So the higher the pressure inside the vessels, the more fluid is pushed from the intravascular to the interstitial space. And the second is oncotic pressure. The more proteins that are in the intravascular space can pull fluid from the interstitial to the intravascular space or retain fluid in the intravascular space. So when we're administering fluids, how do we decide if someone needs water or if someone needs the electrolytes saline? We determine if the patient needs water based on the serum sodium. So the serum sodium is a concentration and reflects the relative water balance. If the serum sodium is elevated, this reflects a relative water deficit, which is an intracellular dehydration, and the patient needs water. If the serum sodium is low, this represents a relative water excess, intracellular overhydration, so they do not need water. We determine if a patient needs sodium based on the extracellular volume status or intravascular volume status. So if the patient is intravascularly volume depleted, they're hypotense, tachycardic, orthostatic, they need sodium. If the patient has signs of extracellular fluid overload, edema, or third spacing, then they already have a sodium excess. Now we're going to get into the different types of IV fluids, but before we get into that, if you're liking this video, please share it with someone else who you think may be interested in learning about this subject. It's this type of referrals, word of mouth, that helps the channel grow and helps get this education to more people. IV fluids can be compartmentalized into isotonic, hypotonic, or hypertonic. Isotonic IV fluids are things like normal saline, lactated ringers, and plasma-lite. These have the same tonicity of plasma and will stay in the extracellular space. So these are given if there's evidence of extracellular or intravascular volume depletion resuscitation fluids for hypotension or sepsis, for example. Hypotonic IV fluids are things like half normal saline, D5 quarter normal saline, or D5W. Now, what about the D, which stands for dextrose? If there is a concentration of less than half normal saline, there has to be dextrose with the IV fluids. The reason for this is the fluids need to have some initial tonicity. If free water was given intravenously, a significant amount, majority of this water would rush intracellularly into the red blood cells, resulting in hemolysis. The dextrose provides an osmotic gradient to prevent this. Then, as the dextrose is metabolized, the fluid water can more gradually move from the extracellular to the intracellular space. So these types of fluids will be given if there is evidence of a water deficit, which is typically manifest as hypernatremia. When I'm giving fluids that are hypotonic but have some sodium in it, I like to theoretically compartmentalize the fluids. So for example, if I give a liter of half normal saline, I think of giving 500 cc's of normal saline. This 500 cc's would stay in the extracellular space, and also giving 500 cc's of water. 2/3 of this water would go into the intracellular and 1/3 stay in the extracellular space. As the majority of water goes intracellular, you can see this is not a good resuscitation fluid to be given for someone who is volume depleted. If you give a liter of D5W, for example, about 667 cc's will go inside cells, 333 cc's would stay in the extracellular space, and only about 82 or 83 in the intravascular space. Also, for this reason, I don't think of D5W as creating a significant risk for congestive heart failure, as the majority of the water is going intracellular. Finally, hypertonic fluids. So hypertonic fluids contain saline, typically 3% saline. This saline sodium is going to be restricted to the extracellular space, and it's going to be hypertonic, so it's going to draw water from the intracellular to the extracellular space down the osmotic gradient. The reasons to give this would be, first, hyponatremia. In hyponatremia, there is relative intracellular overhydration, water excess, so you're going to want to draw the water out of the cells. And second, it can be given therapeutically. This would typically be the case in someone with cerebral edema. You may want to intentionally shrink the brain cells to reduce the intracranial pressure until further treatment can occur. This can occur by giving hypertonic saline and raising the serum sodium. So that's it. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, you might as well hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment or a question that you have about IV fluids, and until next time.